Taylor and Jacob are here too. Okay. Just something. All right. I hadn't seen you for a while, you guys. All right.
Hi. Sorry, I
Hi.
know missed you guys lots. We live about an hour and a half from the shul, so it's been difficult, but we've been watching on Zoom.
Okay. I'll
We
double.
didn't realize we can join live, so we've been watching the videos on YouTube.
Okay, so you missed last week because I forgot to record it.
Yeah, we've been watching them on YouTube instead of, we didn't know we could actually join live while the class was on.
Okay.
But now we know, so we're here.
Now you know.
Yeah.
All right. So, I'm sorry.
Fine.
Oh. I know I'm nothing, but anyway. Okay. All right. Okay. This week's Torah portion is Parshat Noach. If you remember, last week, of course, we have the account, the biblical account of creation. And the first murder is all brought in, and then a kind of listing of descendants and everything leading up to the time of Noah. Everybody messes up, creates, sort of like what downtown, any place U.S. can be like. And no, it's not fair. There's some nice downtown, some places. But so God decides to destroy the world, but Noah finds favor in the eyes of God. We don't really know much of how the Bible understands that. Okay? The Torah uses an interesting phrase. It says, Noach ish tzaddik tamim haya bedorotav. Noah was a righteous man, wholehearted in his generation. So the question is raised, what do you mean wholehearted in his generation or perfect in his generation? Tom is hard to define. So of course, we have two rabbinic opinions. One rabbi says, Tzaddik, he was a righteous man only compared to everybody else. But if he lived in the generation of Avraham, of Abraham, our father, he would have been nothing. Okay? And the other rabbi says, no, he was a righteous man despite his generation. Had he lived at the time of Abraham, he would be even greater. And first of all, it's interesting insight. How much, how do we evaluate compared to something else? They say perfect is the enemy of the good. You've ever heard that phrase? If you're always looking for perfection, you might give up the good. Right? But it also could be that one of the rabbis is reflecting on the fact that at the end of Noah's life, or the story of Noah, we have him getting drunk, lying naked in his tent. And so therefore, he judges his earlier life based upon his later life. Besides which, what's the first thing Noah plants when he gets out of the ark? A vineyard. He wants his wine. He missed the good vintages while he was in the ark for that time. But anyway, then we have another interesting anomaly. Why does God have to have Noah build an ark? Can God say, okay, no, I'm going to put you up on top of this mountain. I'll put a wall around it, and you put the animals up there, and you guys will survive, and nothing will happen to you, and that'll take care of the story. So the rabbis want to read into it, as they do in midrashically, that it takes Noah a long time to build the ark. 120, it was 120, 150, I forget.
120.
120, usually 120 years. All right. During that time, people would see him building this thing, and they, what are you doing this for? And he says, God told me he's going to bring a great flood. And why is going to cause a flood? Well, because everybody's being nasty and stealing and all these no good things, and maybe they would repent and thus be saved. So that is one explanation given why he has to build this ark. Now, as I've pointed out, we know that a lot of the early biblical stories have their parallels in Mesopotamian literature predating Israel. One of those is the story of Gilgamesh, who's this heroic figure, and he's worried about dying when his friend dies. And here's this one person who's been living forever, or something like that. And he goes to see him, and he asks him about it. And his name is Utnapishtim, and he tells the story that he was saved in a flood. There are parallels and differences between the two stories. In the Babylonian account or the Mesopotamian account, the gods are upset because people are making too much noise, which can be taken many different ways. And so the gods decide to destroy humanity. But one of the gods favors Utnapishtim, saves him, and when the flood is over, Utnapishtim makes a sacrifice, and all the gods are hungry, had nothing to eat. There are no people there to make sacrifices for them. So therefore, it says they gathered around the smoke of the altar. I mentioned this the other day, like flies in the savory smoke from the burning flesh. So we have differences of understanding of how this is. In coming here tonight, I was thinking, how do we relate to these things? Now, when we get to the biblical critics, the modern critics will say these are just stories. The Jewish people picked up these stories, and eventually they become part of the Torah. Now that may be, but they try. I think what it is it infuses it with a certain different outlook on life, and different way of interpretation. Does that mean God did or did not tell these stories to Moses at Sinai? We'll talk about that another time. The most traditionalists would say, yes, everything was revealed to Moses at Sinai. So therefore, these stories are true. I don't know if we even have to accept them as being true, even if they are revealed by God to Moses at Sinai, because they're meant to teach a lesson. And I'm always going to come back to that refrain. The story of the Iliad, all right? Iliad, the siege of Troy. Right? Achilles is the tragic hero of it. Does it matter whether or not the war of Troy took place for us to learn a lesson from Achilles and his actions? I would say no. A great work of fiction does not necessarily need to be true, but the lessons you can derive from it can be. And how it comes about, there are different ways of understanding it. Okay? So I think the purpose of the story of Noah is to tell us we as human beings can bring about the destruction of the world. If you're an environmentalist, and it's a real good thing to put into your environmental package, right? Just twist it a little bit, and you've got people destroying the world by not caring about what they do. And it's true. So that's the major thing. Furthermore, I believe sincerely that if you're going to have a religious document that is going to guide a people, it has to give a sense of where you came from, where the world came from, some kind of background to it. And so these early stories in the Bible serve that as setting up the picture, because all this is really setting up for what's going to come about next week. And if you look at the pattern of the biblical stories, you start with Adam and Chava, or actually start with Adam, the first person, first man. And then his family, and they expand, right? And get to humanity. And then the story narrows into Noah and his family. Everybody's wiped out of the story. And then Noah's story goes on and humanity expands. And then we get to the Tower of Babel, I'll come back to in a minute. And then, while the rest of the world doesn't disappear, the biblical account now that will center on Abraham, his family, his descendants, which take place for the rest of the Bible. So it starts at narrow, expands, narrow, expands, narrow, and then expands somewhat, but not as universal as at the beginning. Which means that the people of Israel are part of humanity and share in humanity. They may have their own story, but that doesn't mean other peoples don't have their own stories that are worthy of knowing. But for the Jewish people, you start where your roots are and you follow that story. Right. So if you look at the early stories of the Bible as attempting to explain the basic world as it existed by the around 1200 of the BCE, which is the time given, more or less, time of the Exodus, give or take. You're curious, where did murder come from? Well, we see the story of Cain and Abel, jealousy, anger getting let loose. We have people stealing and taking from others, the story of Noah, where it mentions different people who create different things, tools making and things like that, to give us a background. So by the time we get to Abraham, we have at least an understanding, or at least a description of how that world came into being. The other major story in Noah is that, well, first let me finish Noah. So we said that Noah and his family are saved, sacrifices to God. Then he plants a vineyard and he gets drunk and he's lying naked in his tent. And it says his son Ham comes in and sees him naked and tells his brothers, Shem and Yafet. I was saying Yavan. Yafet, who come in, walk in backwards with a cloak, so they don't see their father and able to cover him. What happened, we don't know. What the intent of the story is, there are all kinds of elaborations on it, Midrash and modern writers, because the anomaly is that while it's Ham who should be, at least you would think, be the villain of the story, it's his son Canaan who is cursed. And now the children of Noah are exemplars of all the ancestors of all the nations of the world, according to the biblical account. Okay, Shem is the author of the Semitic peoples, right, where Semite comes from. Yafet for Greeks and different others. Ham, Egypt, Africa. Other peoples are plugged in here and there. All right, so then, well, why don't they speak the same language? Why don't they all speak Hebrew? After all, God spoke Hebrew, didn't he? The Bible says, he said, "Yehi or, let there be light." That was Hebrew, not English. He didn't say, "Let there be light." Yeah, we'll talk about Hebrew in a minute. But anyway, so as an explanation of that, says that the people cooperated, but they didn't want to spread out. God has told Noah and his family, you got to spread out, fill the world. They didn't want to do that. They want to concentrate, so they decided to build a tower to keep everybody together. One of the Midrashim say that they were worse than the generation of Noah. Why? Because when they were building the Tower of Babel, if a person fell off the tower and got killed, okay, it happens. If a brick fell down, that's part of our building material. That's terrible. Okay. So instead of punishing them, God confuses their languages. The word Bavel, which we usually translate into Babylonia, is also confused, or have a babel of languages as it comes out into English. So we were given the descendants with concentration on the family of Shem, who eventually has a descendant named Aver, who eventually has a descendant named Terach, and Terach has 3 sons, one of whom is Avram, whose name will be changed to Avraham, and that's next week's episode. Stay tuned for that. Okay. Now, excuse me. A little bit of background about Hebrew. First of all, it is a Semitic language. It's related to Arabic. It's related to Aramaic, a bunch of dead languages. Ugaritic one. I don't know if Akkadian falls into that category, but there are a bunch of ancient languages that were similar to Hebrew, and modern scholars sometimes will look for roots and explanations of words that may not be clear in other languages that were cognate of it. Just like, if a French word, you might be able to see it in Latin or see it in French or Spanish, or less likely in English. We know that at some stage of history, an alphabet was created for the Semitic languages. It's usually referred to as the Phoenician alphabet. We don't know exactly where it comes from. We do know from modern scholarship that originally it was made up of pictures. And these pictures became identified with the opening sound of the word that they were a picture of. So the Aleph was supposedly an ox or a cow. And if you think about the modern capital A in English, turn it upside down with the 2 things sticking up in the air, it sort of looks, reminds you of a cow with 2 horns. Okay. Bet had a house. I've never understood that one. Gimel, the 3rd letter, was related to camel. Now, we don't see this in modern Hebrew because the alphabet changed. The early alphabet, which is scholars refer to as Paleo-Hebrew, right, or Older Hebrew, and the Talmud refers to it as Katav Ivri. But those of you who don't, I have copies of the National Outreach Program alphabet chart. For those who don't have it, pass around. So that's not what I'm looking at right now, but okay. If you have it, you don't need another one. If you don't have it, okay. Now, we know that in the early biblical kingdom, what we found of seals and letters and things from that earlier period, that was what the alphabet looked like. This Proto-Semitic. I thought to send you a copy of it, but I don't think I did I?
I don't think so.
No. All right. If you're interested, you can look it up and you'll see. That alphabet, this is not what this is just, I'll explain this chart in a minute. This alphabet was eventually adopted by the Greeks, and it got transformed a little bit. But the essential names of the letters, you can hear that they are the same. The first letter in Hebrew is Aleph. What's the first letter in Greek?
Alpha.
Alpha. Second letter is Bet in Hebrew, and in Greek it's
Beta.
Beta. Then comes
Gamma.
Gamma, and then comes Delta. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. So the first 4 letters are exactly the same in where they come in the alphabetical charts. The others get disrupted for whatever reason, but we find that a lot of the names are the same or similar in showing that ancestry. During the Babylonian exile after 586 BCE, it seems that the Jewish people adopted what is referred to as the Aramaic alphabet. In Hebrew, in the Talmud call it Ktav Ashuri, the Assyrian alphabet writing. And that is the alphabet that we use today. If you ever have the opportunity to see the Dead Sea Scrolls on the display, if you can read Hebrew, you can read the Dead Sea Scrolls. The book, they had it wasn't the real Isaiah, but they had a few years back, had a tour come through Toronto with Dead Sea Scroll samples. And you could, anybody could read Hebrew, could look at the Isaiah scroll and read it right away. They might have trouble here and there, but the letters are pretty much the same. If you can read the English alphabet we have today, you can almost any English alphabet you can pretty much read. You only get some very fancy whatnots that make it a little difficult, but you can read it. We also know that in some of the Dead Sea Scrolls, while they may have adopted the alphabet that we use now for those writings, when they had the name of God, the Yud He Vav He, they often use the old form, the old spelling, the old letters in that document. So you'd have more or less standard Hebrew letters, and then comes the name of God. All of a sudden, it goes back to the old Hebrew alphabet. It shows you, the sanctity that was felt about it. During the Bar Kokhba revolt in the 130s of the Common Era, when they issued coins, they harken back to the great days of Israel beforehand. So what they do is they put the earlier alphabet on it to harken back to the good old days. But you would have a tough time. I have a tough time reading any of those old alphabets today. Okay. Now, Hebrew itself consists of 22 basic letters. All of them are consonants. Biblical Hebrew has no vowels. Only later on, around the 10th century, 9th century of the Common Era, was a system of vowels created. Those are the dots and dashes that are added to the Hebrew script. Early on, there was an attempt by some scribes to make life a little easier, because let's take the word Dalet, let's say king. The word for king is melech. It consists of 3 letters: an M letter, an L letter, and a Chaf letter. Okay, MLK. All right. Now, those 3 letters could be read Melech, king; Malach, he ruled; Malka, queen; Melucha, kingdom. So you'd have to know completely from context how to read the word, which was not always easy. So some letters, the letter Vav, the letter Yud, and the letter He, were sometimes added to words to make it easier to figure out how to pronounce it. So Melech is MLK, queen is MLKH. The H letter, He, actually in the end is a feminine ending to tell you it's a feminine for king, thus queen. Yud, which takes on very similar to the quality of the letter Y in English, plays the same kind of a game. It was often used to indicate an E vowel. The name of David, King David, is Dalet, or D, WD. The Vav was probably originally pronounced as a W, as a W sound rather. But let's say DVD, okay? Now that could also be Dod, which is uncle. All right. So how do you? Some times in the Bible, David is spelled Daled Vav Yud Daled, to tell you that that's a Vav sound or E sound in the middle of the word. You know they're pronounced as David. So, and Hey on the end, and those are, and Vav sometimes as an O sound. So these letters were used later in history to do that. Then some letters were made into a final form. And there's one form of the letter at the beginning or the middle of a word, and it takes a different form at the end of the word to tell you you're at the end of the word. I don't know why only one, but those were that way. The chart that I passed out is for your referencing. They have little signs that tell you how to pronounce some of the letters or recognize the difference between some of the letters, the differences that exist. And so it's very useful as we get along in it. All right. Letters are going to be always pronounced the way they are. They don't change pronunciations. All right. B is always going to be a B, and a V is always going to be a V, but the B and the V can take each other's place. I'll explain that in a minute too. Okay. But Hebrew, the letters themselves are fairly clear. The hard part is for you to recognize them. You don't have anything really to associate it with it directly. I mean, back in kindergarten, elementary school, right? You saw the CAT and you learned that's cat. Oh, that's a cat. Yeah, I know what a cat is. So it's easy to remember what a cat is. The CAT is a cat, unless you want to spell it with a K. All right. But chatul would not ring a bell. That's a cat also. But I'm not, anybody here recognize the word chatul or sus or para? Sus is a horse. Sus is a horse. If you knew Susie, like, no, that's a different story. All right. So you're going to have to just train yourself in your eyes to recognize these letters. And what this text that I have is not the one I would have liked to have had, but it's all I got available right now. And rather than making you spend $40 or something for a really overpriced text, I gave you copies of the pages. I'll probably give you some more pages from other sources or things that I write up myself. But it's designed around the idea of learning Hebrew that you're going to use, so that every Friday night, we talked about Shabbat the other day, we have wine, right? Or grape juice for those who don't use wine. And before we drink wine, we have a blessing. So you probably all have heard the blessing sometime or another. The blessing is Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Borei Peri Hagafen. Okay, so we're going to learn how to read that. So every Friday night, once you've reached the point where you can read all those words, whenever you have the Kiddush being recited at your table, you follow in whatever book you've got. Furthermore, you're not going to be able to accomplish anything unless you practice. You have a partner, practice with your partner. Hopefully your partner can read Hebrew. If your partner cannot read Hebrew, then the two of you learn it together. If you don't have a partner, we'll see about lining somebody up for you. Or maybe the people here don't have partners and want to line up. Okay, so let's turn to page number 1. And since the blessing, let's say the first 3 words of a blessing together. Say it with me. Baruch Atah Adonai. Okay. Right? So the first letter of Baruch is the letter Bet. you'll notice in the middle of the page, first of all, Hebrew is from right to left. It's read from right to left. Why is Hebrew read from right to left? For the same reason that English is read from left to right. Nobody knows. It just does. Okay. So the letter bet, which is the equivalent of a B, the letter B in English, is the second letter of the Hebrew alphabet, alpha, beta. When it has a dot in it, that's how we're going to recognize right now as being a B sound. The dot tells you you stop your air. It's an air stop indicator at this point. How do you pronounce B? You have to put your lips together. B. So B. Before you can say B, you have to stop the air. Right? B. At the beginning of a word, it is almost always going to be with a dot in it as the B sound. There's another, if it doesn't have the dot in it, it's a V sound, because if you, instead of saying B, putting your lips together, if you just try to say B, but don't quite get there, you have, you don't put your lips together, the air keeps going. That's the relationship between B and V. Okay? So B is an air stop, second letter of the alphabet. It's the first letter of the Bible. Bereshit begins with the letter bet. Okay? All right, so when it's like that with a dot in it, it will always be sounding as a B, a B. Any questions on the letter bet? Now, in Hebrew, we just like in English, we have to have syllables. In English, syllables can consist of a vowel, a consonant and a vowel and a consonant, vowel, consonant. The rule for Hebrew is, first of all, a syllable doesn't begin with a vowel sound. There's one exception at the beginning of some words. The syllable has to begin with a consonant. Then there has to be a vowel sound that follows that consonant. If it's a long vowel, which we're not going to pay much attention to, the difference between long and short. If it's a long vowel, that can be your entire syllable. Baruch consists of two syllables. Ba, ruch. Okay, so ba, well, we got the b, where'd the a come from? That's the little T-shaped item underneath it. So turn over to the next page. For homework, do what it says there. Find all the B's in that passage there, which is a prayer we say in the morning. Okay, Eloheinu Shema. So we don't have a copy of the Hebrew.
No, I'm sorry. I can't think for some reason. Thank you.
Right.
Okay, I got it.
I got it. Okay. Please bring them in the future. The vowel that we're going to be introduced to right now is technically a long vowel. The Hebrew name is komatz, right? And it is a. Now, modern Hebrew has different pronunciations, or you want to call them dialects, whatever. Most Jews in North America, not all, but the overwhelming majority of Jews in North America come from European ancestry before Israelite ancestry. Eastern Europe is often in a shorthand referred to as Ashkenaz. Ashkenazim are Jews from Europe. The Ashkenazic pronunciation was affected by languages around them, and there are different dialects even in Ashkenazic pronunciation. But the Ashkenazic pronunciation does distinguish between the long a and the short a, with an o. then instead of ba, there will be bo. When I was in Israel many years ago, one of my nieces was teaching one of my nephews how to read the Hebrew, and he was saying ba 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 ba, and they go, they're very from in the Orthodox community, so when they pray and they learn the Hebrew with Ashkenazi's pronunciation, so she said lo ba 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 bo 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 bo. Okay, and there's another difference that we'll come across is the tav. We're only going to learn one pronunciation, the T sound for it. In Ashkenazic circles, there'll be an S sound to it. Right now, the ba or ba, we can't know exactly how it was pronounced because after all, the vowel system was created later on. But the bet clearly is a B sound, and the kamatz is telling us it's a long A associated with it sound. So whenever you have a letter with a little T-like underneath it, that is going to be ah. To confuse you, in the Koren Sidur and in some other, they mark it when it's a little different, make it a little different in shape because it's a different sound. When it's normally the cross and bottom are more or less the same size, it's always going to be an ah sound. So for the sake of practice, there's one line at the bottom of that page. So let's all read together, sounding like a bunch of kids. All right. So we say ba, 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 ba. All right. That was not very difficult. That's only one letter, one vowel. So that's you can ba all you want. All right. Second letter of Baruch. What does it sound like? Ruh. Ruh. So it's an R sound. Israelis will make it a rolling R. I can't do the rolling R very well. Baruch. All right. The resh, by the way, the name of the letter is always going to indicate the sound of the letter. I'm not going to expect you to remember the names of the letters, just know the sounds. And if you remember the sounds, you might catch on to the names. Right? The resh is an R sound. And it has its own certain rules that we'll see later on, but it operates just like the letter R. Okay, so if there's a vowel under it, you have the consonant of the R, the resh, followed by the vowel sound. So, for example, we've learned ah, so the resh with the kamatz underneath it would be ra. Right? Not ra with an ayin after it, because that's bad. Okay. So line number 1, we read it together. Ra, ba, ra, ba, ra. Okay, line 2. Ra, ba, ra, ba, ba, ra, bar, ra, ba. I said, no. On line 2, we have ra, ba. Then we have a nonsense word, ra, ba, 2 syllables. Then bara, 2 syllables. Then we have 2 consonants with a vowel in between. So since the vowel comes under the first letter, all right, you say b with the a, and then you got to stick the r on the end. Bar. Right? Priest or a rabbi walk into a bar.
Sure.
Or as we used to say, Zeke, I see a bar. War over the R. Okay. Just no Boy Scout joke. All right. So let's go down to line number 3. We have Rab, Bar, Bara, Rabba, Rar, Rabar, Barar. Makes lots of sense. All right, line number 4. Ba, ba, ra, ra, ba, ba, ra, ra, ba, bar, ra, ba, bar. Baran, yes. Little Beach Boys.
Yes.
All right. Moving right, all right. We're going to move quickly tonight because we want to get as far into it we can. So that's why it's a little bit crashing into it tonight. Those of you who are taking the other class as well, there's overlap, but I think, you know, if you do both of them, it can't hurt. Okay? All right. The third sound in the word Baruch is actually a vowel sound. And it is pronounced as U. Now that letter, the line will appear later on as a consonant. Here it is just because of the dot in the middle, it's just an U sound, except for when we come another exception later on, mitzvah. But anyway, okay. So this is U. Shuruk is the name that they give to it. All right. And we will see, generally speaking, you will not find it at the beginning of the word. All right. Almost always it follows a consonant. So that's why all the examples here have it following a consonant. So let's look at line number 1. We have boo, roo, roo, boo, boo. Okay. Line number 2. Boor, ra-ba, ba-roo, roo-boo, ba-ra. Okay. Line number 3. Ra-boo, ra-boor, ba-boor, roar, ba-roar. Is that clear to everybody? Okay. By the way, the word ba-roar means clear. Line number 4, we're on exceptions. 4. Ooh-ra-boo, ba-roo, ba-roar, ba-boor, ooh-ra-boor. Line 5. Boor, boo-roo, ooh-ra-boor, ra-boo, boo-roo. All right. We're still working on the blessing of Baruch Atah. We're going to be introduced to a very problematic vowel. Anybody here know phonics? Any teachers here taught phonics? Anybody ever hear of a schwa?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. In Hebrew, it's a shva. Schwa is the minimal sound you have to make when you pronounce a consonant. And try to say D without the little something that comes after it. If you want to say dog, you got to know, but you kind of get a little tiny taste of an ooh after it. Sometimes at the beginning of a syllable, that's when it will be pronounced like that. If you have a letter at the beginning of a word, it will be pronounced because you can't say the letter without something. You can't say the consonant without something. Now, it's also used as an indicator that there's no vowel. Why they couldn't come up with 2 different symbols, I'll never know. But the Masoretes, bless them, who created the system that we use, did that. So line number 1, all right, line number 1, let's look at that. Let's be very clear, okay? We have b, r, b, baru, rabu, barur. Now, they show you now that sometimes it just tells you there's no vowel there. That will be at the end of a syllable. never at the beginning of a syllable. So the word in the middle of the page here, the word bar theoretically could be written without anything under the resh or with the shva under the resh. They're both pronounced the same way, bar. You wouldn't say bara. You never say ra, by the way. All right. So I know it gets a little confusing, but you have to work at it, I'm afraid. Just know at the beginning of a syllable, beginning of a word, it will be pronounced. At the end of a syllable, at the end of the word, it will almost never be pronounced. Okay. So line number 2, we have bar, 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 boor, bar, boo. Okay. Line number 3, bar, 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 boor, bib, bar, bar, bib, bar, boor. Now, they're not following complete grammar here, but that indicates to you that the letter that is falling under is part of the previous syllable. Line number 4. Rebar, rebur, barur, berabur, rubar, rubab. Rhubarb. These are all nonsense syllables, nonsense words for the most part. Line number 5. Barbara, berucha, ra, something. Urbu, rob, bar, bar. All right. Line number 6. B, r, bur, roar, baru, baru. Okay, everybody still on the same page with me? Anybody lost yet? All right, I'll try harder. All right, we have one letter left for the word Baruch. This is the example of the letter that is 2 forms. The Chaf and the Chaf Sofit. The Chaf is sort of like the C there, the backward C. The final form has a long leg coming down. Basically, the difference between the form of the letter when it's in the middle or the beginning of a word from at the end is that the bottom stretches out down. Right? If you look the one on the right, it curves around. And on the left, instead of curving around, it keeps going down. All right? Any question? Okay, now this is a little more difficult to pronounce for all you non-Hebrew speakers or Arabic speakers or only English speakers. It's the letter Chaf is really, the Chaf is towards the front, while Hat is at the back, but we won't worry about that much. As long as you say Ch for both of them, we'll let you get by. They say the way to know it is Hanukkah. Hanukkah. You know, it's not Hanukkah, it's Hanukkah. If you can say Hanukkah, you're in a good shape. Or maybe the Loch Ness Monster, maybe. Yeah. So I don't think it's deep in your throat, it's in the top of your throat. But anyway, what do I know? So let's go line number 1. We have cha, cha, hu, bu, cha. Line number 2. Bach, rach, chach, racha, racha. Okay. Line number 3. Bechach, rucha, bucha, roar, ruch. That's tough one. All right, let's do line number 3 again together. All right. Bechach, rucha, bucha, rur, ruch. Ruch. Line number 4. Bechur, bachur, rabuch, rubach, rabucha. I'm sorry, trying to throw you off there. Rabucha. Line number 5. Barur, Orcha, Baruchu, Rachabu, Bachrach, Bachrach. Line number 6. Barach, Birach, and Baruchu, Beburcha, Becha. And the last word on the page, Baruch, and they say they're translating means blessed. All right, the first word of every bracha, every blessing, is Baruch. Okay? Whatever blessing you're going to make, for bread, wine, asparagus, apples, peaches, plums, Baruch is the opening letter. Okay, an opening word. It is usually translated as blessed or blessed. Sometimes it will be translated as praised. It is my opinion that in a blessing, Baruch Atah Hashem, the correct translation really is source of blessing. And God is source of blessing, because we can't bless God. How can I say, "You blessed are you, O Lord our God"? Well, that makes no sense. Not really. Okay. So what's the first word of a blessing?
Baruch.
What does the word bracha mean?
Blessing.
Blessing. Same 3-letter root, right? Bet, resh, chaf. All right. So now we've got the first word of the blessing. Let's go on to the second. The letter Aleph. What does an Aleph sound like?
Just have fun.
We don't pronounce it at all. It's treated as a silent letter. The biblical historians will tell you that once upon a time it had a sound vowel value. I don't understand that, but that's the reality they will tell you. So the only sound associated with the Aleph would be the vowel that it's connected to. So it either you have the Aleph silent, then the vowel, or the vowel followed by a silent Aleph. Follow?
The point of it, though.
Well, that's a good question. If it has, well, originally,
Be there.
yeah, well, originally, like I said, originally, that's why the biblical scholars say originally it had a sound value to it. But also it then becomes a part of place indicator for the vowel that's going to be sounded. Because you can't have a vowel without a consonant. So if an unpronounced consonant, that's what you've got. So like the first letter of the pronunciation, the first letter of atah, the word atah is ah, because you've got the aleph there. Okay, so that introduces it for the vowel. But you're right, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But a lot of things don't make sense in spelling, right? Look at English. English is a crazy language for spelling. You know. Okay, so line number 1, we have u, ba, ra, bu. They came, or they're coming. Line number 2, ar, ra, ba, ba. What is abba?
Father.
Yeah, abba is more like daddy. Well, av is more like father, but this translation is father is fine. Okay. Okay. Line number 3. Bur, ur, ba'u, arur, be'ur. Line number 4. Ba'ur, arbu, bara, ra'ucha, barechu. Line number 5. Aruch, arucha, abcha, abba, bara. 6. Be'a, be'u, be'ura, ba'ur, aruba. All right. We now introduce our second vowel, the patach. On page 8. The patach is pronounced ah. That's where we're going to pronounce it, just like the komatz is ah. Technically, it's a short vowel. If you want to get into Hebrew grammar, you will have, if you have a syllable with a consonant and a komatz under it, that's a full, can be a full syllable. But with a consonant and a patach, you need another consonant to finish the syllable. If you don't remember that, that's fine. I won't test you on it. Okay. So, but it's ah, as they say, is as in Shabbat. I know what they say in komatz. Yeah, Shabbat too. They use Shabbat for both pronunciations. But like I said, in Ashkenaz's Hebrew, Ashkenazi pronunciation, you go to a lot of Orthodox synagogues, it will be aw versus an ah. Okay. The Sephardic pronunciation, by the way, the reason we use the Sephardic pronunciation is because in Israel, that became the dominant Hebrew form. Probably for 2 reasons. One, that the local population, many of them who were of Sephardic heritage, that was the pronunciation they used. Secondly, when the Zionists came to the land of Israel and they decided they were going to use Hebrew as the language that they're going to speak, many of them were anti-religious, and they didn't want to use the pronunciation they associated with a synagogue back home in Europe. So they latched on to the Sephardic pronunciation because they didn't go to any synagogues for the most part, but they didn't feel that antipathy to the Sephardic pronunciation. Apparently, that's part of the rationale for it. Okay, so we have another the patach short vowel. Okay, line number 1. Rabba. I'm sorry, I'm going too fast. Ra, ba, cha, a, u. Line number 2. Ach, bar, bach, char, rach. Line 3. Becha, bara, aracha, barcha. See now, because that's a short vowel under the bet, I know that the resh is going to go with it, bar. It's going to be barcha. Although they make it sound, all right. Line number 4. Rucha, rabcha, rebach, arba. Line number 5. Aruch, bachar, arbu, baru, urachu. Line 6. Arach, be'arach, ra'u, arach. All right, we're going to do one more page and then take a little break because my throat is going to give out if I don't take a break, and you guys have to absorb some of this. All right, the letter now is the letter Tav. The letter Tav in Greek is the Tau, but it's also in Greek when they were transliterating some of the names from the Hebrew Bible to Greek. They used theta for this letter when it was at the end of a word. That's how we get Sabbath. That's why biblical scholars assume that when it had a dot in it, it was an air stop, like I said, right? But without a dot in it, it comes out, at least according to some, more like a th. Depends on where you put your tongue. Right? But if you try to say T, but you don't quite touch your palate, you get th. Right? That's how they believe with the Greek transliteration and the rule of thumb of the Masoretes, so there's an air stop, that it was pronounced that way. Now, the TH sound was not that terribly common in the world. And so in Sephardic lands, they dropped the distinction. It's always a T sound. That's how we're learning to read it. It's going to be a hard T no matter what, with or without a dot. In Ashkenazic lands in Europe, they adopted an S sound for it. My daughter-in-law, who took linguistics, not linguistics, but anyway, suggests that one way of making a non-air stop gives it almost an S sound instead of t. So it depends where you put your tongue when you're doing that. So in Europe, it became an S. So the big giveaway between Ashkenazic and Sephardic Hebrew is how words that end with this letter are pronounced. Shabbat or Shabbos or Shabbos. Sukkot, Sukkos. Well, they never pronounce that way. It's usually Sukkos. All right? That's another issue we'll talk about later on. But we are going to treat it like a T all the time. Okay? So line number 1, we have ta, ta, t, ta, tu, ta, t. Okay. Line number 2, tu, tur, bat, toot, root. Line number 3, tabur, rubat, betur, beur, at. Line number 4, bachar, tabach, turcha, tarbur. 5, tabat, batra, arbat, terau, tat. Line 6, terachu, tura, atur, abau, ticharuf. All right, we're going to take a break for a couple of minutes, and unless you're, you go back over it a little.
That one is. Just say, that's the year we have a one, yeah. Oh, there's a.
They know.
We're in slow down.
Oh, this is all, yeah.
Oh, but you still.
This guy is level one. It is my. That's number two. November first. Oh.
Like we have to. Yeah, this is that.
No, testing, that's not it.
No.
Like, why do you think? Oh, yeah. That's why I'm thinking, yeah. But how long ago did you hear? Yeah, you read it, I was 8 years ago, I think I'm already there. Yeah, I know, I just. Right? I know, I think it helped. But yeah, like we were reading our book, like. Kind of. Do you think, we becoming like the book and bring the Jewish prayer? The actual, yeah. At least it's more, it's like multi-way.
Not really.
Like
I tried to teach this a long time ago.
state or province?
Hebrew guy.
Province, they only have state.
Well, you're more advanced in this.
That was like so.
Where you started, which.
Most of that came from reading prayer books. That usually is good practice. Certain words just you see over and over again.
More advanced in this.
Republican.
You are.
It's like a story.
Much more.
So this ought to be a breeze then.
Maybe printed.
Oh yeah, I see that.
I saw it and spent time from.
Yeah.
Grammar, syntax.
Yeah.
Well, you read.
I just need to expand my vocabulary
Ah,
and read faster.
yeah. Places, in some places they read so fast, it's like,
Well, that's
you're like, trying to keep up here.
You know what? I don't know what who that does, right? Like, guys, they're reading, but you can follow what they're saying, and some guys don't bloody try to follow that. Like a machine gun going off.
I learned that from, I listened to Yemenite Jewish people do the Torah, or they call it Laning on Torah.
This would be.
It's very easy to follow because it's very, it's not slow, but it's like you pronounce every single word, and it's like it's very easy to keep up with.
Yeah.
And they don't go too slow, but they keep it at a moderate pace.
I know what's happening.
Man, because some of them you get.
I heard a rabbi once describe it as going like a machine gun.
That's a little bit, I think it's just sometimes I think it's just, it's all, like, some of them had practice, they've had practice problems since they were kids. Yeah, we learn, I didn't have to, I didn't go to Hebrew school, so I didn't, I didn't have it. I'm doing Hebrew school, so they're immersed in it. Mhm.
When they did it.
Yeah, we're taking this in and I took another class yesterday.
That's the entire class.
For Hebrew, yeah. Yeah.
Find all the books.
And few people in here are in the class too.
That's basic, right?
Okay, let's get back to the Hebrew. A few more letters. Okay,
Is it recorded?
yes, I didn't turn it off. People are gonna have a big
Oh,
gap.
man. We sit there like, yeah, let's go.
I said I was taking a break.
Come on, but take a help off all that.
Yeah, well, let's see. Well, I have to fast forward, I hope.
So our conversation is recorded.
Oh, boy. We're really gonna have a good airplane on this one. Oh, we were just talking about, I was talking about the Yemenites, when I heard the Yemenites landing of Torah.
Oh,
It's,
different.
very different.
They do the TH.
Yeah.
The Yemenites do the TH.
And it also sounds like it has an ancient sound to it. It's really
Yeah,
something.
well, the Yemenite pronunciation by Cornelius, I think a lot of scholars think that's probably closest to the original pronunciation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let us continue. We are now up to the last letter in the second word, ata. All right, the letter hey. Letter hey is just like the letter H in English. It works the same way. All right. Now, and they give an example is in Haggadah, the H at the beginning. At the end of a word, usually it's not pronounced, but that usually means that there's an ah sound at the end of the word. If it is pronounced, there will be a dot in it, and we'll maybe talk about that another day, a mapik hey. But even in a word in Hebrew, if you see a Hebrew word without vowels, and the letter hey is at the end, normally that's a giveaway that it's going to be an ah sound at the end. The word na'ar, na'ar means a young person, young male. Not a kid, not a little kid, but not a full-grown man yet. And many times in the Torah, there's a number of places where the word na'ar is written, but it's pronounced na'ara to tell you it's a female. And that indicates that at some point they may have added the hey into the Hebrew text of the Bible. That's subject to great big debate. But we certainly see that indicated by that. The letter hey at the end of a word sometimes merely means an ah sound, and frequently it means it's the feminine form. Okay? Ish, isha. Yeled, yalda. Sus, susa. All of those male, female. Okay? And at the beginning of a word, it often has a usage of the. When there's a, all right? It often means the. Okay, so now line number 1, we have ha, ha, hu, ha, ha, hu. Ha, hu, ha, hu, 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 ha, hu. Line number 2, har, hara, ba, bat, ba. 3, rabba, bahar, excuse me, tur, tura, haba. 4, abba, hara, becha, racha, bura. You asked me about the aleph and why we have it there. If you the first nonsense syllable is the hey there gives you an ah sound, but if it was father, daddy, it would be an aleph there. Okay. Line number 5. Tahur, turcha, habacha, bechura, ba'a. 6. Haba'a, beracha, haberacha, bahara. And so the word ata means you. So the first 2 words of every bracha are what? Baruch ta. All right. Now, we mentioned a little bit the other day about gender with God, male, female. Ata is the masculine form. At would be the feminine form. You know, it's backwards. Usually we say put the hey on the end makes it feminine, and in this case, it's the reverse. Similarly with numbers. Okay. So when we say a blessing, we usually, the normative translation is blessed are you. There is no verb for being present tense in Hebrew. There is no is. All right. If you want to say he is a man, hu ish. There is hu haya ish, he was a man, but no who is ish. He is a man. Okay. All right. The Pintele Yud. The letter Yud is equivalent. We're on page 11. The Yud has the same function and style and usage as the letter Y. All right? It's always going to be. It acts the same way the letter Y would act. If it follows a vowel sound, it often gets absorbed into that vowel sound. Just like boy, the Y is there, is bo, not bo, but boy, but it gets absorbed into the O sound. Or bay, ray, K, all right? Similarly with the letter Yud. After following a vowel sound, it often gets absorbed into it. Okay? But when it's at the beginning of a syllable, it will be just like the letter Y is used. All right? And we learned in kindergarten or first grade, the vowels A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y. Okay. So line number 1, we have ya, 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 you. Line number 2, yach, yach, yar, ya, yaba. 3, ya, yirach, yachar, yuchar. 4, yara, yabu, yarbu, yarhu. So they tell you, as I was saying, that if you have a vowel first and followed by the yud, it intensifies the vowel. It says, all right. So let's look at line number 5. We have by, I, tai, rai, rabbi. 6, barai, bachai, rabbi, burai. All right. In Jewish tradition, the name of God is understood to be something very special, very holy. And we don't pronounce it under normal circumstances. Indeed, we today don't pronounce it at all. Instead, we substitute a different word for God's name. We say Adonai, which means my Lord or Lord. That's not what Yud Hey Vav Hey was originally pronounced as. We don't know how it was originally pronounced. And in order to avoid throwing papers away that have the name of God, there is a tradition to substitute something. Today, most of the time, there'll be the letter Hey with a little slash. All right. Or, as in the case indicate here, it sometimes will be two yuds. All right. And when we come to those two yuds, there's the yud with the shva under it and the yud with the kamatz under it. We are being told to pronounce it as Adonai. So when we come across it in prayers, in blessings, the double yud, we will pronounce it as Adonai. So that, all right, so page number 13, we'll have a review, and then we'll send everybody home for the night to recuperate. And prep, all right. Yeah, we did a lot. Page 13, lucky 13. All right, line number 1. Barai, Rabbi, Yerachai, Bechurai, Abai, I. Line number 2. Hi, Ya, Haya, Hi, You, Hayu. 3. Barach, Har, 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 Becha, Har, Becha. 4. Yabach, Rabach, I'm sorry, Rabcha,
Rabka.
Rabcha,
Huh.
Rabcha, Rabcha. Yarucha, Arucha, Yabuch. 5. Ata, Baruch, Adonai, Haya, Yeruch. 6. Bahai, Beharai, Arbecha, Tar, Tarbut. 7. Re, Be, Chu, Re, Bechu, Rachut. 8. Yar, Becha, Yar, Becha, Yar, Becha. 9. Atara, Atarai, Urai, Beur, Turcha. Okay, you have a very important assignment. Practice, practice, and more practice. You cannot learn how to read the Hebrew without practicing it. There's no substitute for it. Okay?
I would go through all the pages.
Yeah, we're gonna go through the whole book.
Oh, boy.
Not tonight, not tonight.
It's like,
I say I'm sending you home now.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, well, I don't know, no. We will not do as many pages in the future. We did a big chunk of it tonight to get you started. Because there's other things that we're going to be doing in each class. By the way, I was informed by one of the booksellers that the Guide for Jewish Religious Practice is no longer available.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
Yeah, they called me yesterday.
Yeah, I'm going to have to find out. That's a terrible thing. Because that's really,
Been written in mine for 6 months, for 6 weeks.
yeah,
Mhm, same
no,
here.
it's out of print. I don't know if they're going to be doing another printing of it or not. Mine's,
It's not digital, in a digital form somewhere.
Oh, yeah, you can get Kindle.
can you get it on Kindle?
I got on. Yeah.
Oh, I heard you can get it on Kindle.
Yeah, I think I have to wait till I.
I'm not big into it either, but
I ordered it from Alphabet from Almost.
yeah,
That's Amazon. That's Amazon.
Amazon.
Yeah, you have-
Usually if
you can use- you gotta- Oh, you're the front for okay, yeah.
No, I can't do anything until you find the grandfather.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Physical book.